Welcome to episode 4 of Badasste. COVID comes calling. I don't think I could do my podcast about being a badass and trying to face fears and trying to find courage without talking about the pandemic. I feel it's only responsible to give a trigger warning because a lot of the stuff I will be talking about will be potentially upsetting, especially if you really know me in real life. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, a counselor, or anything like that. So what I'm sharing is my personal experience, and it's not been easy. And I know it hasn't been easy for anybody, really. So if anything I talk about is too difficult, please find help. Thank you. And here we go with the 4th episode of Badasste. If you witnessed my trailer for this episode where I gave a bit of a summation about what it's going to be about, you know that I almost got hit by a train when I was in Toronto. And it's so strange because where I live now, there are trains all the time. And man, they move slow. But the train that almost hit me was not going slow, and it was on a train track that I thought had been abandoned. I had gone past it so many times, it never seemed to work. The railing stayed up the entire time. I had noticed construction people, at least I thought, were working on it, but I honestly didn't think it was going to work because when you kept on going past it, you eventually got to the GO train station here in Toronto and Via, which is where the trains fucking are. A week before I moved to this apartment, there was the global announcement of the pandemic. And literally, I think it was 3 days after I had moved that the announcement for Canada, the state of emergency, was announced. Unbelievable timing. So here I was on my own pretty much for the first time in my adult life, living with people, but not necessarily family or someone I was going to end up marrying. So this was supposed to be a rite of passage that was positive in my life. And here I was living in the same city as family and friends, but it was like I was on the other side of the planet. I might as well have been on the moon, to be absolutely honest, because no fucking way I'm going on the TTC. Basically, everything was shut down. I had no place to go. I didn't know the neighborhood. My roommate had showed me around once, which was great, but it's not the same when you are scared to go outside and to be around people. So this day that I was walking down the road, all of a sudden, all I knew is that the railroad crossing hit me in the head, and thankfully I was taken aback. So I did step back for a second and the train just went fucking right past my nose. Like, it was so fast. I cannot believe I didn't end up being a stain on that old track or a new track. I don't even know, because it had been there for weeks and I had never seen an existence of a train whatsoever. So when this happened, I had been living in the neighborhood for, I'd say, like 1 to 2 seasons. I moved in there when spring was starting. I think summer was just starting. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not me. I am like hyper safety conscious, like at all times. What was even more difficult is the area I was living, super concentrated. The amount of people pressure was shocking. Even in Vancouver, like, I could avoid seeing people. I knew how to get around and use alleys and things like that, which was kind of normal there. It isn't normal in Toronto. So I realized something had to change. I was not functioning. I was not there psychologically, and it was because I was so fucking scared all the time. One of the things I would do is I'd actually literally be like a hamster on a wheel going around a track that was at a high school, and there was lots of people that were camped out, on the park area of the track as well, and people doing the same thing because you didn't want to get close to people. And I'm like, this is literally insanity. I hate repetition, and having like my only freedom was going around this fucking track. I was not coping. So then I took it to the next level and I started doing alleys. I started only walking on alleys because Bloor Street Even during a pandemic, people are like really close together. And at the beginning, you didn't have masks. Things like that weren't really available. And if they were, they certainly weren't N95 worthy. There weren't side streets where I was either. They were all major arteries. The only fucking way around was to go through the alleys. Now, some cool things happened as a result of it. I did discover a lot of art that was beautiful, that I had an Instagram account that I shared all the time and everything. But I'm like, this is not life. This is not safe. And I really knew it wasn't safe when I saw a guy take a shit right behind my building where I was living. Like, I just did not feel safe on any level whatsoever. And thankfully, I did have some foresight. Everybody was saying it was just going to be a few months. And I just knew that the science for vaccines and everything, this was going to take a long time. So what the hell was I going to do? I am not a person to run away. I am a person who goes on adventures, sure. I literally was so stuck because I didn't want to give in to fear. But at the same time, I was living in a building where this ginormous duct above my head was circulating the air of all the people in our building, people who were still having parties, people who were still having people over, who didn't give a fuck about anybody. I just knew if I didn't get out, I was going to be in some serious trouble. Being a child of trauma as a result of my brother's death when I was very young, I've had to learn to deal with the fear of death. Not only that, I've had to deal with anxiety for everything. I've been in therapy a lot, and I strive all the time, hence Badasste, to be wary of fears that aren't real versus the fears that can kill you. Fear keeps us safe, but fear can also keep us small. I am not someone who wants to be small, and I certainly never want to give in to fear, but I am also a fucking warrior. I have had to be my entire life. I am not a coward, and I don't back down. So what the hell do you do when there is a virus that can kill you, that is so easy to catch, and not only that, can kill the people you love? If there's one thing I believe in, it's not harming people, especially when they haven't harmed you. If someone harms me, well, that's another story. But I was in a quandary. I didn't know what to do. So I left Toronto. I found a place in Kitchener, Ontario, and moved there instead. The truth is, the pandemic really does impact the poor. The pandemic really is so much harder for people who can't live by themselves, who don't have cars, who live in high density areas. And there was only so much I could do to change my situation. To the people that couldn't, my heart breaks for you. I remember after I moved, being able to go to a park and just spin in a circle because there's nobody around. I couldn't believe how free I felt. It's a privilege that I was able to do this, and I recognize that. One thing I love about Toronto is how irreverent it is. I'm very proud to have been there and grown up there, but during a pandemic, no, not the place I felt safe. So Kitchener is a tiny city. Well, at least it was when I first moved here. Of course, a lot of people like me have left Toronto for smaller cities, and now those cities have gotten bigger, and that's a whole other issue. This isn't to say that I was completely safe. I knew that I wasn't completely safe, but I was in a hell of a lot safer situation than I was before. The funny thing is that I always think of the Indigo Girls when they sing the song, I sailed my ship of safety till I sank it, I'm crawling on your shore. Sometimes this is what happens to me when I make the safe choice, which is why I'm always more afraid to make the safe choice than make the more dangerous choice, because my life completely fell apart as soon as I left. Within 6 months, I had gotten poisoned. Then I had my heart condition. And then I was given medication that basically poisoned me all over again. And I've had health issues chronically since I left. Oh, the irony of making the safe choice. This is what I refer to as the futility of safety. Because I ended up in the hospital probably 6 times, which is right now, especially the worst place you could be for getting COVID. 2 years go by. I managed to avoid getting COVID. Don't really know how. I think I just got lucky. And, I did all the things other people did that still ended up with getting sick. And then I find out someone I'm living with has it. It might be one of the most terrifying moments of my life. This entire time I've been wearing masks in the house. I mean, I was triple vaccinated, and when I got the first vaccine, they told me getting the vaccine does not protect you from getting sick. What it protects you is from potentially dying or ending up on a ventilator. I did not want to end up sick. So they said, well, then keep wearing a mask where you live. So for the last year, I have been wearing masks in my home, like where I'm renting, outside of my room. So basically the only time I'm getting fresh air is when I'm outside, or if I happen to be able to open my window on a nice day. And I'm going to get woo-woo here just for a second. I woke up and I actually heard in my head a voice say, COVID is coming. And I'm like, what? What is that about? Why did that happen? Now that voice was actually wrong. Turns out, I find out an hour later, COVID's fucking here. It's in my house. It's where I live. This is exactly what I've been terrified is going to happen for 2 fucking years. I moved and started over completely, pretty much alone at this point, by myself when I get this voice in my head. And I think I'm going to lose my mind. Now, I knew this person hadn't been feeling well, so I had stocked up on canned soup, put as much into my backpack as I could, because I had a really bad feeling. And then that morning I woke up, I heard the voice in my head, and then I got the text message, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, this is it. This is it. What the hell am I going to do? It's moments like these that I really in some ways wish I was a guy, because if I could have peed into a bottle and stayed in my room, I would have. I would have. And trust me, I thought of options when it came to that. But basically what happened is I heated up cans of soup in my room, and I lived on peanut butter sandwiches. And when I had to pee or shower or anything like that, I wore 3 masks with an N95 filter at the same time. And I can tell you that's basically like suffocating. And until you've been terrified to brush your teeth or to have a shower without waterboarding yourself, which is going to happen when you wear a mask, I found out, it is a different kind of terror than I have experienced before. And not one I ever want to experience again. Basically, that's how I lived for over a week, and I self-isolated because that's what you're supposed to do for 5 days. I tested every other day. Somehow, by some miracle, I dodged it, which is just like dumb luck, because I know there are people out there that have done exactly what I've done and still gotten sick under these conditions. I did get out for walks. I wasn't going to, but I just avoided people completely, like went into woods and just stayed away from people to keep them safe just in case. And thank God I did, because I think I really would have been over the edge if I hadn't been able to get outside. It's the only way I know how to deal with this stress right now. And the ironic thing is that here I am thinking I'm going to lose my mind. And even if I did, I didn't feel like I could call for help because I didn't want to put anyone in danger. So I got Apple TV free for a week, went through the morning show, which is so fucking fantastic. Thank you, boyfriend, for recommending it. I almost got through Severance as well, but between that and the Blue Jays, I did not get to see the entire season, but I highly recommend both shows. I highly recommend doing whatever you can if you're in my situation to create a fantasy world and escape anything that gets your mind off things. When you're dealing with root chakra issues such as survival, you really can't be creative. At least I can't. There was no energy for that. So I wish I could have done something like this podcast or created more jewelry or something like that. But I wasn't functioning. I wasn't really even eating, let alone, or even getting enough water probably. So what I would do, other than watching, TV basically on my laptop, is I would go for walks and I'd photograph my jewelry. and, come up with creative TikToks and things like that so that I could do something somewhat productive without losing my mind. The worst part about all of this is that this all happened right before I was finally going to see my family again for the first time in 2 years. That was just fucking cruel. But as I said, I hit the lottery when it came to my health and not getting COVID. Pretty sure I ended up malnourished as a result of the crappy food that I was eating because I didn't want to leave my room. I've kind of made this decision that I'm going to finally get to see my family, knock on wood, if all things go well soon. But after that, I'm kind of just going to surrender. I have been a warrior in a foxhole for 2 years. I, unlike most people, at least around here, am still going to wear masks. I'm still going to be very careful. I'm still going to practice safety at all times if I can, but I'm also going to start living life. I'm also going to start doing things. I can't just sit in my room any longer. 2 years of solitary confinement, and it's not living. And I don't really believe in fear dictating how I live, hence Badasste. So I'm going to get back to life. I don't know what that means exactly, other than I am studying to get my driver's license, because one thing I have learned, other than the fact that cars are now ridiculously expensive, and now that the price of gas has gone through the roof, and this is like the worst timing possible, is that if you can have a car, you have freedom and safety in a way I never fully comprehended before all of this happened. Being a driver is privileged in so many ways, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I'm going to try. And I have been working on getting my license for the last year. That is number 1 on my list. Number 2 on my list is to take a scuba diving course. I have always wanted to learn, and my ear has finally apparently healed. I had a hole in my ear. I think I could actually learn how to scuba dive now, which is a huge dream of mine. And the place that I want to take the classes from also teaches you underwater photography, which, at being a Jacques Cousteau kid growing up, I cannot tell you is the most exciting thing I can think of. I remember seeing stingrays, which was actually a terrible experience, but that's another story, when I was in Grand Cayman, as they said, and I remember having the mask and looking underwater and going, oh my God, it's just like on TV. So it's like, I want to experience like water life for real and not just from a screen. Although I do not want to get body checked or stung by a stingray. That I can do without, but I want to learn how to do this. And my God, 2 years of pent up energy for learning and doing, I'm ready. I've also decided that at least for a while, I'm stepping away from my Etsy store. I'm not stepping away from creating, but as a result of the strike, I've had a lot of time to think about it. And I'm not sure Etsy is the right place for my jewelry, for my warrior altar jewelry. So people are very supportive of me and write to me and buy things from me directly all the time. So I'm going to be brave and put that on hold. That was a very painful decision to come to, and I might change my mind. So if you're looking for more of my work, please find me on Instagram via Sacred Susie, or you could use the hashtag #WearYourAltar and you can find me there. I was also brave enough to contact my local counseling association that helped me out last year, because after what's been going on this year, I need more help. And I would really recommend, if you have any way possible of calling a distress line to get some help and to talk to somebody and to find out if there's somebody you can speak to for, a sliding scale, anything. I highly recommend it, and I support you in that decision. One thing I'm going to speak to them about in particular is how to no longer associate food with terror and suffering. And I used to be a foodie. I was Susie the foodie. I wrote about and photographed food and went to events for 14 years. I loved it. Food was a way that made me happy. And now I'm dealing with malnourishment. I'm dealing with starving myself to be safe. And I don't know how to change that. So one essential thing about being a badass is, if you need help, fucking ask for it. Get it. Deal with it. Look into that shadow. do the work. And that's what I'm going to do. I want to give a shout out to Tony Robbins in particular. Listening to him on my walks through the snow, with him by my side, telling me all sorts of stories and everything, he's really helped me. And I know he's not for everybody, but if you're an empathic person and someone like Deepak Chopra actually just puts you to sleep because he's like so zen, and you have chronic fatigue and you need someone to like lift your energy up, I highly, highly, highly recommend Tony Robbins. I attended a conference that he did for free online. And one of the things he said was that besides age and obesity, the number one factor for people getting COVID is fear, because it raises your cortisol levels. So it's not just a psychological thing. It's the mind-body connection. And I remember every fucking time I had to go to the hospital, every time when I opened my door and left the house to get into an Uber and potentially expose myself on the way to the hospital where people were there not wearing masks, even though they should have been, was don't give in to fear. Surrender. Honestly, it was like, okay, like when I decide to do something, like that's it. I shelve the fear. You have to. And so when he said that, I'm like, how many times was I in the hospital? I was even admitted to the hospital for my angiogram, and I didn't get COVID. And I don't know if that's the reason. Like I said, I'm no special person here, okay? Like I know so many people who have gotten it that didn't deserve to get it, that tried everything. But him mentioning that about fear and how fear makes you vulnerable to getting sick, just it's like a light bulb went off. And so I tried to do the same thing when COVID came calling here. Every time I left my room, I just tried to be brave. And that's all we really can do. You know, he always says, you know, change your story, change your life. And I sort of really embraced the warrior in myself, even though, and warriors cry. Okay. So I get upset. Who fucking cares? My throat closes up when I get upset. Sounds like I'm crying. I'm not crying, but it's where my intensity goes. Hence why I'm doing the podcast, to try and work through a lot of this. So to embrace that part of the story, I actually created a playlist, also as a result of creating a warrior character in Warcraft. Another thing that I've done during the pandemic to stay sane. Wow. As an empathic person listening to warrior music, unbelievably inspiring. It actually really does change my energy. I'll put a link to the Spotify playlist I came up with. There's also other songs like towards the end, but I listen to it on my walks too, to give me more energy. And that's the other thing Tony taught me. He is way ahead of his time when it comes to somatics, which I'm just learning about now. Being outside, being physical, doing qigong, doing yoga, whatever it takes, and yes, I do all of those, has made all of the difference. I mean, I have fibromyalgia. There is only so much I physically can do as a result of it. It is very frustrating to feel like I have a warrior spirit in a very fragile body. So hence why the pandemic was so terrifying. I went outside pretty much every single day. I did my best to get outside every day, even in the winter, which I fucking hate. And Ontario winters are not easy. They are very, very difficult. So I wanted to say thank you to Tony for that, because that not only kept me physically stronger, it kept me closer to sanity. I was trying to figure out, how do you change your story to change your life the way he suggests? And I realized one story that, of course, always stuck with me. If anyone grew up with the song Rasputin, I was thinking about it and like, I looked it up. I wanted to find out information about him. They apparently tried to kill him by poisoning him with cyanide, and he ate the cookies and he was fine. And I'm like, this all started when I was poisoned, and I was poisoned by a product and that I was very allergic to, that changed my life forever. But it didn't kill me. I was unable to absorb water and food for weeks, and I couldn't understand why I was starving and dehydrated all the time, and I had to reteach my body how to basically live. but I was alive. And then a few months later, I had stress-induced cardiomyopathy. And what happened to Rasputin? They shot him, and very close to the heart, before throwing him off a bridge. And I think how he ended up dying was he drowned. And I'm like, my heart was broken. My heart was so under stress that it changed shape and could have killed me. But I survived. I was lucky. I had had chest pains for over a week. And it wasn't until my hand went numb that I realized that something was very wrong. So I went a week and I lived. And then a few months after that, I was misdiagnosed with something and was given medication that would make me a really good candidate for getting COVID. And I didn't need the medication. And yeah, it did ruin my health all over again. It destroyed my stomach. I ended up in the hospital with stomach rot. I couldn't see properly. I'm still struggling with getting my sight properly back. And I'm still alive. And then COVID shows up where I live. And I manage to avoid it. And I'm alive. So you think as someone like Rasputin, who, not to take anything away from the horribleness that he endured, I actually went through a lot. And I'm alive. I don't know how I'm alive, but I am. And I'm not taking any of it for granted. I'm going to start living life again. I can not hide any longer in this foxhole. I am hoping that in the next 2 weeks that things are going to change for me, and I am going to start getting out and doing things. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I do know that I'm going to stay open to possibilities. That yes, in the grocery store, I will still wear a fucking mask because I'm protecting myself and other people around me. And, Doug Ford can go fuck himself. But I'm going to do more. I'm going to connect more. I've done my time. I did what I had to do. And now anything can happen. As my mom used to say, it's time for the good stuff. So from almost getting hit by a train to moving to a new place I'd only been 2 times before in my entire life, into COVID showing up where I live, I've survived. But it's time for more. Thank you for listening to the 4th episode of Badasste. If you have a story idea, if you would like to share your story of courage, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for listening. Be a badass, but also stay safe. And oh, how difficult that is to do. But I see you, badasses. We've been through a hell of a lot in the last 2 years. Keep being strong. Keep being brave. I see you.